What's up, y'all? This is Sunny. I wanted to make this video to share with you all my experience as someone who was sexually abused at a very, very young age and how the Jehovah's Witnesses handled my case. This is the main thing that caused me to wake up to the truth about the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. Like many of you, I watched the Royal Commission hearings in 2015, and when I saw that, I was absolutely shocked at the similarities between what those women went through and my own situation as far as how the elders treated those women. And in my case, there's only one elder, but how he treated me in handling my case. It's a pattern with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and you see it time and time and time again, where the organization protects the person who is the abuser or the accused abuser at the expense of the emotional health of the victim. And you see it over and over again. Right, so what I actually ended up doing was in 2015, when I woke up to the truth about this organization, I actually wrote a letter to the elder that handled my case as a victim of sexual abuse. I was abused at age 7, but everything came to light in the year 2000. Of course, my parents knew what had happened to me. My mom and my stepfather, they knew what had happened to me, but it came to light on a congregation level in the year 2000. And the way that elder handled the situation was so terribly. It was so awful how he handled my case and what he did, that 15 years later, I actually wrote a letter to that elder, and I'm going to read that letter to you guys in just a little bit. But what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to take you guys from age 7, when the abuse happened, up through age 16 when I was baptized. I'm going to take you there up until the year 2000 when everything came back to light again as far as my uncle abusing me, to 2015 when I woke up to the truth about the organization. So I was 7 years old, and my uncle Corey, he raped me. And along with that sexual abuse, there was also torture involved. And again, as I said, when I read the letter, I'm going to go into detail about everything that he did to me. So that'll be in just a few minutes. So that happened when I was age 7. My mom, and that was 1981. My mom got baptized in 1985. And so I believe that there was some exposure to the Jehovah's Witnesses when I was abused in 1981. The first person in our, well, actually, the first people that were exposed to the Jehovah's Witnesses organization in my family were my mom, who again was baptized in 1985, my aunt, who was baptized at some point before my mom, and my mom's aunt, who also got baptized sometime around that time. Now, it was my mom's aunt's son who molested me when I was 7 years old. So that happened when I was 7. A few years later, around the time my mom got baptized, I went to my first meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it was the book study. And it was there that I met the person who was going to eventually be my best friend, become my best friend. You might have heard of him. His name is Daniel Genser. So that was the first meeting I went to. And I started studying the Bible with the son of the person who studied the Bible with my mom, an old Jewish woman. So her son, the Jewish woman's son, studied the Bible with me. And I'm actually not going to say his name out of respect for that man's. I'm trying to catch myself and not use the word brother, because those people aren't my brothers. It's hard to break out of that habit, though, having spent a lifetime using those expressions, brothers and sisters. So I might slip up. But they're not brothers, they're not sisters, they're not even friends. But at any rate, out of respect for that man's son, I'm not going to say his name, his son ended up committing suicide in 2017. And that was a very, very tragic loss. He was very young, in his mid to late 20s, a beautiful human being with a very, very kind soul. From what I hear, I didn't know him. I had met him when he was when he was a baby, but from what I understand, he was just a beautiful person. But he coped with depression for his entire life, and eventually he committed suicide. He couldn't take it anymore. So, rest in peace to him. So I was studying the Bible with that sister's son, and that man had a sister who was my age, Jennifer. We grew up together all through elementary school, junior high, high school. Jennifer was one of my very first friends in the whole wide world. Just a great, lovely, sweet soul, kindest person you ever met. Jennifer passed away in 2019, and that was another tragic loss. She was married to a great man. They were both Jehovah's Witnesses. They had a great marriage over the course of 20 some odd years. And again, it's just a very tragic loss that Jennifer isn't with us anymore. I think about Jennifer all the time. I actually dream about Jennifer more often than I ever did when she was still with us. That loss hit me so hard. I hadn't spoken to her in many years, me having been not a part of the organization for some time. But like I said, she was one of my very first friends, and I miss her terribly. So at any rate, I got baptized. I ended up getting baptized in 1990 when I was 16. And between 1990 and the year 2000, those were pretty unremarkable years. I never got in trouble. I was a good kid. I coped with depression, but my depression had started when I was in junior high, and that's lasted for my whole entire life. I'm thankful right now that my depression is under control, but it was really bad during those years between 1990 and 2000. But aside from that, the years were unremarkable. I can tell you all that. The thought of trying to become a ministerial servant or an elder, it never even occurred to me. I did what I was supposed to do. I went to the meetings. I studied for the meetings. I went out in service. But I never had the goal of achieving any sort of status in the organization. I can honestly say it never even occurred to me. And it's arguable that attitude may have qualified me even more so for those quote unquote privileges, because I never saw it as any sort of status. So I was never appointed, but they were bringing me along. I got to the point of reading the Watchtower, carrying the mics, of course. Read the Watchtower several times. I believe that I even said the prayer at one of the big meetings a couple of times. Took the group out in field service and everything. So just like all the other brothers in the Kingdom Hall, they wanted to use me, but never quite qualified. And really, those were fun years. I had a lot of friends, and we had a lot of fun. We partied. We actually did some things that probably wouldn't fly in certain congregations. We went out to clubs. We went to shows, danced on stage, had just a good time. I believe during those years, one of my close friends ended up getting disfellowshipped. But what I can say is all of my friends that got disfellowshipped or got in trouble, none of them ended up leaving the organization permanently. They all came back. But one thing that I didn't do, and I'm very proud of this fact, is I never shunned any of my friends when they were either in trouble. I never treated them badly. I never ignored them. Of course, we couldn't hang out or anything, but at the Kingdom Hall, I always said hi to them and I always smiled at them. So I was never about this whole shunning thing. And so, yeah, again, we had a lot of fun. I'll never forget one time, we actually, 17 of us, because we had a pretty big group of friends. We rented a dorm in Mount Hood, and we organized a big old ski trip, and we all went down to Mount Hood and had a ski vacation for 4 days or so. There weren't any elders there. There were no chaperones. A couple of the friends that were there were dating. It was just a fun time. We had a blast. So that was 1990 through till the year 2000. Now, in the year 2000, something really wild happened. My uncle, who had raped me when I was 7 years old, he decided that he wanted to become one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He wanted to start studying seriously with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And of course, he ended up studying with the man that ended up handling my case as an abuse victim, the person to whom I wrote this letter that I'm going to read you guys in just a little bit. So they were studying, but what he would do, this guy was a freaking wacko and still is to this day. He's a freaking psycho. We'd get to the Kingdom Hall and he would try to talk to me, try to interact with me. He would even try to hug me. And every time I think about it, I just wonder what kind of a psycho behaves that way. This man violated me, and he did the worst thing that one human being could ever do to another human being, And the molestation was only part of it. He also tortured me. You're going to hear about that too in a few minutes. So this man would try to interact with me. And the thing about that is you can't, tell somebody to fuck off, or you can't punch somebody in the face and tell them to leave you alone, leave me alone. Why are you doing this? You can't do that right in the middle of the Kingdom Hall. So what I would do was just kind of back away, put my hands up, make it clear that this is it. I'm not liking this. This does not work for me, Leave me alone. Don't touch me. Stay the fuck away from me, And that went on for a few weeks, this person trying to interact with me. And one day, what happened was he tried to interact with me in that way, despite the fact that I made it clear that I wasn't having it. And what I ended up doing was putting my books down in one of the aisles. And this freaking psychopath goes and he puts his books down right next to my books. He wanted to sit next to me. And I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle that. I ended up having an emotional breakdown right there at the Kingdom Hall. I'm 26 years old. He put his books down next to mine, and I was just a mess. I actually ended up going outside, and I was just standing outside at the door, near the door of the Kingdom Hall, because I didn't know what to do. I was just so distraught. And that feeling that you have when you're so overcome with emotion, but you can't really just fall apart right then and there, because people will see you on the ground weeping. So I was holding it together, just kind of 26 years old, mind you, holding it together, just kind of shaking my head. The tears are starting to come, starting to hyperventilate. And who should come walking up than the man, Dale, who was studying with my Uncle Corey. He comes walking up into the Kingdom Hall, and he sees me standing there, falling apart. And he asked me, what's going on? What's happening? And I couldn't tell him right there outside the Kingdom Hall. So what happened was Dale brought me downstairs, and what he did was just so wrong. Every time I think about it, it shocks me, and it speaks to how ill-equipped those humans are in handling situations. They're complicit. I honestly believe that the behavior of these elders makes them complicit with the pain and suffering that we as abuse victims have to endure for the whole entire rest of our lives. If it's a situation where they get involved, they are absolutely 100% complicit, and I stand by that. What he did was he brought me downstairs to the Kingdom Hall, and I'm just weeping. I just lost it. I fell apart. It was one of the very few times in my life where I was not in control of my emotions. I was crying uncontrollably. And I told Dale, I said, Corey, he molested me when I was 7 years old. And now he's trying to talk to me. He's trying to hug me. And he wants to sit next to me here at this Kingdom Hall. And I just can't take it. So that's what I said to him. And what Dale did, what he did was he said, okay, here's what's going to happen. He decides to organize a meeting between myself, my Uncle Corey, who had raped me, and he himself, Dale, the three of us, at the Kingdom Hall. We're going to have this meeting, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to hash this out. Just the absolute worst thing that any person who's any sort of an authority figure can do in these types of situations. I've never actually asked a social services professional about just how wrong that is and how actually liable that man could be, or that type of behavior might make a person for doing something like that. I'm going to eventually, and I'm just for my own information, I'm going to find out just exactly how out the window that type of behavior is. But at any rate, he did organize that meeting, and I did go to it. And even now, when I think back to the fact that I agreed to go to that meeting, I wonder why. And again, it speaks to just how brainwashed we are as part of that organization. Why would I want to have a meeting? Why would I want to sit down in a room with this human and listen to anything that he has to say to me? Why? The guy had reduced me to tears right there in front of the Kingdom Hall, a grown man. And I know he's a freaking wacko, a psycho. There's nothing that this person can say to me that could change the fact of what he had done to me. But I agreed to the meeting. So, the next week goes by. We sit down in this meeting. Again, it's downstairs at the Kingdom Hall, and it's dark down there, And that's another thing. We're sitting down there in this dark basement of this Kingdom Hall, talking about these things. I'm sitting here. My Uncle Corey is sitting 2 inches away from me, and Dale is sitting a few inches away from him. And I'm forced to listen to this psychopath talk about whatever the fuck it is that he's talking about. He had actually written a letter to me that I never read because I'm not interested in hearing anything that he has to say. But we're sitting in this meeting, talking about some things. I had asked him because I had always been worried about my cousin, my male cousin. I actually also have 2 female cousins. But I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I was always worried about my male cousin, that he had done something to him. And I asked Corey flat out if he had ever done anything to my cousin. And he said no. And he said that he had tried to do something against one of my female cousins. But apparently he was not able to do that. And I was so relieved. So one thing that I ended up asking Corey in that meeting, because as I said before, it wasn't just rape, it was also torture. He locked me in a closet. And I remember being in that closet And the fear that I experienced when I was locked in that closet, 7 years old, it's the type of fear that a person mentally blocks out, hopefully for the rest of their life, because it's so traumatic. That's how scared I was. I never thought about it over the next almost 20 years until that week, in between the time when I first sat down with Dale for that first meeting outside the Kingdom Hall, and the following week when I had the meeting with all three of us. It all came back to me in the middle of that week, me being locked in that closet. And some other things happened too. I'm going to talk about that when I read the letter. But I remember being locked in that closet, and there was a light switch in the closet. And I remember I was screaming my head off trying to get out of the closet, and I couldn't. And I was reaching up because I was trying to reach the light switch, and I was trying to jump because I was trying to hopefully have my finger be able to flick the light switch, right? So I was jumping and jumping, but I never reached it. I couldn't reach the light switch. And I couldn't get out of that darkness. And it's just beyond fear. That's what he did to me. And I asked him, I said, "Why did you lock me in a closet?" And this is, now we're at the meeting that the elder had arranged between the three of us. I asked him, I said, why did you lock me in a closet? And he said, I guess basically because I was a rotten kid. And that's true. He was a rotten kid, and he's a rotten human being to this day. And when he said, I guess because I was just a rotten kid, Dale eagerly chirped in, and he said, well, I guess that's about as straightforward as you can get. He said that to me. And I was shocked and aghast that he said that, because right there in that moment, I understood with 100% clarity what Dale's purpose was in that meeting. What he wanted me to do was to hurry up and accept my Uncle Corey's contrition and apology so that Corey could excel as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. That was the goal. That's what Dale wanted. And it speaks to the spirit of how they behave in this organization. He wanted me to hurry up and just accept his apology so that they could go from there, and that hopefully he could progress and have some sort of a spiritual life. And I knew that Corey wasn't going to last as a Jehovah's Witness. But as I said, I was so hurt when he reacted that way. I guess that's about as straightforward as you can get. I couldn't believe it. So that happened. The meeting happened. Life goes on. That was the year 2000. In 2002, I ended up moving to Seattle, and that's when I started getting in trouble. I ended up getting together with a very wonderful woman named Kendra. Just a total sweetheart. I didn't realize how amazing she was when we were together. But that didn't work out. I ended up getting privately reproved because of our relationship. We hadn't really done anything. We certainly hadn't had sex. But the Jehovah's Witnesses' morality is so ridiculous and ludicrous that I was privately reproved because of that. A couple of years later, now we're in probably 2004, 2005, I started up with another quote-unquote sister in the organization. I ended up getting in trouble again, publicly reproved this time, even though we hadn't hardly done anything. And nothing actually happened with her as far as getting in trouble with the congregation, but I ended up getting publicly reproved because of what we did. And then a couple of years after that, around 2008, 2009, around 2008, I started up with Kendra again, and sort of, I guess you could say, round two, and I ended up getting in trouble again, and that's when they kicked me from the congregation. And that was fine. It had been a long time coming. Um, Mind you, I hadn't had sex with anybody before I got disfellowshipped. It's just that the Jehovah's Witnesses morality is so just ridiculous that that's what happens. Um, so I got kicked from the congregation. I was disfellowshipped, and I spent the next few years trying to get back. I still believed it. I missed my friends terribly. One thing that I actually did end up doing was I wrote an email to my best friend, Daniel Genser. And again, you might know Daniel Genser because, as I think I said before, John Cedars, he interviewed Daniel around 2000, maybe 14. I'm not exactly sure when Daniel wrote it, but he wrote just an amazing paper and posted it online, talking about what caused him to wake up to the truth about that organization. It's illustrated, and it's just an amazing document. And he wrote that, and I believe it's called What I Came to Believe and How I Came to Believe It, or something thereabouts. And it talks about how he woke up to the truth about the Jehovah's Witnesses organization, right? But sometime between 2009 and 2012, probably 2012, I wrote Daniel an email just because I was so desperate to have some communication with my best friend, asking him how he's doing, this and that. And he ended up writing me back saying he said what he should have said, as someone who was still a Jehovah's Witness and still believed. He wrote me back saying that it's probably best that we don't communicate, and basically you should just hurry up and get reinstated. I wasn't really hurt because it's not much more than I expected. It's still wrong, and he ended up apologizing to me for that, some years later after we were both out of the organization. But he did what, as a good Jehovah's Witness, what he, I guess, was supposed to do. So that happens. A couple of years go by. I'm still plugging along, doing my thing, trying to get reinstated. And I got an email from Daniel just saying, "What's up?" And I couldn't believe it. All I wanted to do was hurry up and get reinstated so that I could talk to Daniel and his wife and all of my other friends again. I just desperately wanted to get reinstated. And here I am, still disfellowshipped, and I get an email out of the blue from my best friend who had rejected me a couple of years before that. So I'm just like, what the hell is going on? And I said, "I'm good. How are you?" And he proceeded to kind of one thing led to another. And he basically told me that he had woken up to the truth about that organization. And he told me in that email, he had been doing some research. And I'm like, "Well, what kind of research?" And he's like, "Well, do you really want to hear? Because once you hear these things, you can't unhear them." And it was good that he said that to me, because I was still trying to get back. I didn't know anything about what he was about to tell me, but I was interested in hearing it. And so he told me, a whole bunch of different things. Pretty sure at that point he directed me to that document that he had written online. And the crazy thing was that here I was disfellowshipped. Daniel was still a member of that organization. He's telling me why nobody should be a part of that organization. And I'm sitting here subtly trying to tell him why it's still the truth, right? Because, as I said, I didn't know anything at that point about any of the research that I was about to start doing. So it was just really ironic how that all ended up working out. But the things that Daniel showed me was, I didn't just believe it, just take it in and just believe it, because I still wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness. But I had an open mind. I looked at the material from all the different directions. Around this time, I ended up watching the Royal Commission, and it was me watching that Royal Commission, along with all the research that Daniel had showed me. Significantly, I looked at the Watchtower series of articles from 2011 where they talk about 607 BCE, and I looked at Carl Olaf Johnson's rebuttal of that same Watchtower, and how 607 BCE doesn't hold. I looked at it with a completely open mind. I looked at it like with a magnifying glass. I was looking at it with my Bible. As I said, as a disfellowshipped person, I'm sitting here looking at these things and I'm absolutely shocked and aghast. It just flabbergasted at what I'm learning. And I woke up to the truth about the organization, and it was everything that I thought was true about everything that I believed about my existence, about my future, was a lie. And I had PTSD for several weeks after that. I was shell-shocked. I didn't know what to do. I was completely out of sorts. I ended up working it all out, mentally, of course. But those were some crazy weeks. So, watch the Royal Commission hearings. And when I watched those, as I said at the beginning of this video, the things that I learned, when I watched it, it's like the parallels were striking when it came to my own situation and how Dale had handled my case. And so I actually wrote a letter to Dale in 2015 talking about how he had handled my case with Corey 15 years previously in the year 2000. And I'm going to read that letter for you guys right now. So now I'll preface this by saying that at first I had written this, I posted it on Reddit, and I didn't want to use real names, and I didn't use real names when I posted it to Reddit. So I changed the names. But when I read it here, I'm going to use the real names. I copied this from my document that I had posted. Actually, I emailed the letter that I had originally sent to Dale. I emailed it to myself, and when I emailed it to myself, I changed all the names because I knew I was going to post it to Reddit, and then I posted it to Reddit. And what I have here is the document with the names changed. So I might accidentally slip and call my Uncle Corey Jameson, because that's the name that I used when I posted it to Reddit. So here we go. Hi Dale. It has been a very long time since we've spoken. Around 15 years. Mind you, I wrote this in 2015, and the last time I had spoken to Dale before that was around 2000. That's a long time, but as I've gotten older, I realize it's not as long as it seemed like when I was young. As you may know, I'm no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I was disfellowshipped in 2009. For several years, I was trying to get back reinstated, put in my application 3 times, but never quite qualified. I debated for a long time whether I wanted to send this email, but I feel like I have to for several reasons. I'll get into those in a little bit. You are the first man in this world that I felt as much affection for as respect. That is a fact. I don't know if you are aware that to people like me who grew up in the Clover Park congregation, you are a mentor. I have decided that I'm not interested in rejoining the Jehovah's Witnesses. There are several reasons, and one of them is why I'm sending this email. It's because of the Jehovah's Witnesses' policies on child sex abuse. I want to be clear that this isn't the main reason why I can't go back to the Jehovah's Witnesses. It is, however, a significant reason. Now, I'm actually gonna. That's what I wrote at the time. That's what I was feeling at the time that I wrote this email. But actually, you could say that that is the Jehovah's Witnesses, how they handle child sex abuse is the main reason why I left that organization. It's the main reason combined with everything else. It's all just as significant. So, 15 years ago, you were studying with my Uncle Corey. I'm sure you know where this is going, but I will refresh your memory on specific details. We were all in Clover Park. Corey was trying to get baptized. He was trying to build up some kind of a relationship with me. At the meetings, he had made a habit of trying to talk to me and even trying to hug me. It was terrible. One day at meeting, he was trying to interact with me, despite the fact I made it clear his advances were unwelcome. After this interaction, I went and put my books down in an aisle, and soon after, he put his books down right next to mine. He wanted to sit next to me. I lost it. I had an emotional breakdown right there at the meeting. You saw me outside of the Kingdom Hall falling apart. I was 26 years old, a grown man reduced to tears by a family member who had raped him 20 years previously. You told me that you knew about the abuse and you arranged a meeting between me and Corey. I want to stop for a moment and make it absolutely clear that I am over the actual abuse. I have dealt with that as much as a person can. I do not sit at home crying about sex abuse that occurred when I was a child. So I'm over that. The policies that are in place in the Jehovah's Witnesses organization about child sex abuse are deplorable, despicable. They put children in kingdom halls at risk. They put children in the community at risk. I am specifically referring to the two-witness rule and policies about what a victim must do to try to establish guilt when the abuser doesn't admit to it and there are no other witnesses. I have looked at the Elders Manual as well as branch procedural documents. The policies are so awful that they made me dizzy when I read them, and that's 100% true. They did make me dizzy when I was sitting here reading those little slips of paper that they send in, with names of the victims, allegations, and all of this. These forms that they send in to the headquarters, as opposed to doing what they need to do and just going straight to the police and letting them handle it. So I was dizzy, when I was looking at that material. And further referring to the fact that the Jehovah's Witnesses won't refer allegations about abuse to the police unless required by law to do so. You should have never, ever put me in the same room as Corey. The fact that you did so proves how little congregation elders know about sex abuse and how ill-equipped they are to deal with these situations. I watched the entire Royal Commission hearings and I encourage you to do so. The things I have learned in my research have made it extremely difficult for me to believe that any loving God can support an organization with policies that go so completely against logic, reason, common sense, and what I believe to be true Christian love. This is the bigger picture. But even that is not the main reason why I am writing this email. When I wrote this email, I said, in this last passage that I wrote, I said that the things I have learned in my research will make it extremely difficult for me to believe that any loving God can support this organization. Extremely difficult is not the proper, is not the right expression. Impossible for me to believe that any loving God can support this organization. It's not possible. This organization's history, as far as protecting children, lack of protecting children, and actually protecting the abuser, disqualifies them. I believe, I might have said this earlier, I believe that the way that an organization treats those that are most vulnerable, treats children in situations when they have been violated in this way, the way that an organization handles those situations says a lot about that organization. It tells me everything that I need to know about that organization. And the Jehovah's Witnesses history is despicable, deplorable. So I'm going to go ahead and find my place to continue here. This is the bigger picture, but even that is not the main reason why I'm writing this email. You knew that Corey had raped me. Did he also tell you that he locked me in that closet, or did that come out when I mentioned it? Did you know that there was a light switch in that closet? I couldn't reach it because I was too small and it was too dark. I screamed and I cried. I was trying to get out of the closet, but Corey had his shoulder against it and he was laughing as I was trying to do anything I could to get out. Did he talk about that? Did you ask about his reaction to my abject terror? Did you know that when I went over to his house to be babysat, that he wouldn't feed me? Did you know that when he had me locked in the closet, I was hungry? Did you know that when I asked for food, he opened the closet a little bit and dangled raw bacon in my face? I was 7 years old. These are significant details that elders don't know about. I'm pretty sure you didn't know any of that. Had you known, I doubt it would have made any difference. You likely would still have arranged that meeting. From my perspective, all you knew is that you had a Bible study and you wanted to see him do well spiritually. See, the thing is, I knew Jameson. See, I did it again. I meant to say I knew Corey. Jameson is the made-up name that I used when I posted this to Reddit. Let me find my place. The thing is, I knew Corey far better than you did. That's why I was so shocked and offended by your behavior in the ill-advised meeting you arranged. I asked Corey, "Why did you lock me in a closet?" He said it was because he was a rotten kid, which is true. Then you eagerly interjected, "Well, I guess that's as straightforward as you can get." Or something like that. That was so wrong, and it hurt so much. It very much seemed like all you were interested in was my accepting Corey's contrition and apology because you wanted your Bible study to excel. It was horrible. This is the reason ex-witnesses believe the Jehovah's Witnesses policies and culture protect the abuser rather than the victim. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't go to the police unless required. The victim must prove allegations under interrogation by elders. A pedophile may still qualify to serve in appointed positions provided his abuse is not public knowledge. That might not be true anymore. I'm not certain. What you should have done is kept Corey away from me and warned everyone with children in that congregation about him. I knew Corey wouldn't last as a witness. I had to sit in that meeting with that psychopath and listen to him talk. I sincerely hope that you will never subject another person to a meeting like the one that I had to sit through. You should never put a victim in the same room as the abuser, okay? It perfectly illustrates how little the elders know, and my situation is nothing compared to others. I actually compared my situation to what the women in the Royal Commission I went through, and my situation is nothing compared to what they went through. I have nothing but sympathy when it comes to, for those women and the terrible situation that they had to go through, and anybody that has had to cope with these things. Let me find my place again. I sincerely hope that you will never subject another person to a meeting like the one I had to sit through. You should never put a victim in the same room as the abuser, okay? It perfectly illustrates how little the elders know, and my situation is nothing compared to others. Back then, I didn't know how wrong it was. I certainly didn't want to speak to him. Why would I? He had already reduced me to tears. I was a grown man weeping in public. What if I was a little girl? What if the situation was the current situation and the abuser didn't confess? Would you also put the victim in the same room as the abuser? This is the reason I'm writing this email, to implore you not to put a person in that situation. I know it has been 15 years. Perhaps I should let this go. I can't do it. If I would have known then what I know now about the Jehovah's Witness, I would have written this letter 15 years ago. The Jehovah's Witnesses have no right to interject themselves in situations of this nature. Frankly, I believe the elders, who are just men, have no business interjecting themselves into the lives of the members of the congregation at all. But that's a whole other issue. It's such an inclusive organization that this behavior is considered normal and appropriate, but it is horrific and disturbing. Many millions of dollars in donation money to the Watchtower Society has been spent settling child abuse cases brought against the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. I started having panic attacks right at the same time as that situation with Corey at the Kingdom Hall. I believe that two things contributed to these illnesses. One was the sudden recall of being locked in that closet, right? So as I said before, I had blocked that out. For many, many years, I had blocked that out. But it all came back to me. The actual molestation I had never forgotten. Because, of course, I had seen Corey at family gatherings and stuff over the years. I never forgot that. But it was being locked in that closet that I believe that mentally I had blocked out. But it all came back to me in that week between that first time at the Kingdom Hall that I was breaking down and Dale brought me downstairs, and the following week when we actually had that meeting with the three of us. It all came back to me. I was actually at work when I had the sudden recall of being locked in that closet. And I'm telling you guys, it's a fear that I am not even capable of explaining. Nobody should have to experience that. 7-year-olds shouldn't have to experience that. I know that it traumatized me for many years. I have nothing but sympathy for people who have had to experience anything like that. I know that there's people out there who've experienced much worse than I have. And I have nothing but respect. And I'm just so sorry that anybody has had to experience these things, anything even similar or worse than what I've had to experience. But yeah, that all came back to me being locked in that closet, and it messed me up. So I believe that 2 things contributed to these illnesses. One was the sudden recall of being locked in that closet. It all came back to me at some point between my breakdown at the Kingdom Hall and that meeting you set up. Terror doesn't sufficiently describe it. So those were 2 traumatic incidents that happened at the same time, and I'm still not the same. There's actually something else that happened in that week. It actually happened at work. I'm not going to talk about that because it doesn't have anything to do with this situation. But yeah, I didn't mention that when I posted it to Reddit. So those were 2 traumatic incidents that happened at the same time, and I'm still not the same. I certainly don't blame you for what Corey did to me. Again, I am over it. Just please don't put another victim of sex abuse in the same room as his or her abuser. You had no right, and I would have been better off if you hadn't. Pedophilia is a problem in the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. Don't subject another young person to what I went through. Please don't do it. There are a lot of reasons why I will find it extremely difficult to go back to the Jehovah's Witnesses. The wording of that line is actually doesn't even apply anymore. What I should have said and what I believe now, there are a lot of reasons why I will find it impossible for me to go back to the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'll never go back. And then I said, I would be open to advice from you on my specific issues. I wrote that at the time. That's no longer true. There's nothing that man could say or that anybody could say that could convince me to go back. There's nothing that anyone can convince me. There's no way that anyone could convince me that organization is anything but evil. It's an evil organization, and it masquerades as evil as good. And the fruits are in the spirit of the organization. You could see it in stories like mine and countless others of people who have been abused sexually and how the Jehovah's Witnesses have handled their case. And this is not even to speak of things like the shunning and the shifting timelines and the lies, all of that Looney Tunes crazy nonsense that you read in the Revelation book all those years ago. Not even to speak of those things, which are also important. So let me go ahead and finish this letter. It says, I am not a closed-minded apostate. I do not lack impartiality. It is my impartiality that validates my opinions. I have nothing to gain by the Jehovah's Witnesses belief system being a fantasy and everything to gain by it being truth. I don't believe it is truth, but my life would be better and I would be happier if it was. The child abuse stuff is only one reason I have such a hard time with the belief system. There are many others. Take care of yourself. I had to say this stuff. So that's a letter that I wrote to that elder in 2015 when I woke up to the truth about that organization. I never got any response. I considered it pretty cowardly that he never responded. He never had anything to say to me about all of the stuff that I wrote in that email. I learned a little bit later that he had forwarded that letter to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, so they know about it. But he never had anything to say to me. about it. I also, when I sent that letter to the elder, Dale, I also sent it. I CC'd both my parents on it. And their reaction was shocking. You remember how I spoke earlier about how they will side emotionally with the organization as opposed to siding with their own children? That's exactly what happened. My mom was so mad at me for sending that email, and I couldn't believe it. I'm going to go ahead and end this. Actually, and as I said before, I'm going to do a whole nother video talking about their reaction to my sending that email, and also just their general reaction and how they treated Corey throughout the years. It's shocking and amazing and horrible. I'm going to go ahead and end this letter, end this this video. I'm sorry. Something that my mom said to me after I had sent that email to that elder. She said to me, "Can't you learn to forgive?" In reference to my Uncle Corey and what he had done to me. Can't you learn to forgive? When she said that to me, did you ever like have someone say something to you and it's so shocking that you almost begin to question your own, I don't want to say sanity, but it feels like the person couldn't possibly have said it, so there's no way that they could have said it. It's so shocking. That's how I felt. I couldn't accept right away that she had said that she said to me, "Can't you learn to forgive?" in reference to my uncle who had raped and tortured me all those years ago. But she said that to me. That's how brainwashed those people are. I'm going to go ahead and end this video. And as I said, I'm going to do another couple of videos pretty soon here. If you know me, Sonny's not my real name. I'm going to give you all my email address. But if you know me, go ahead and reach out. If anything that I've said here resonates, and you want to talk, go ahead and email me. It's fine. My email address is UKUUM as in man, E, @gmail.com. I'll repeat that. UKUUM as in man, E, @gmail.com. I hope you guys have a great evening. Take care of yourselves.